Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Michelle Graff, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief at National Jeweler. I'm pleased to welcome you to the latest and potentially very scary episode of My Next Question, National Jeweler's new webinar series sponsored by RDI Diamonds. Today's session is hosted by our Associate Editor, Lenore Fedow, and features Alexandra Lozier, the jewelry artist behind Alex Lozier Jewelry. Before I turn it over to Lenore to get the webinar started, I just want to let our attendees know that if they have a question, they can type it in to the Zoom Q&A box at the bottom of their screens. I'll be back on at the end of the discussion to share the questions with Lenore and Alexandra. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available on the National Jeweler website this coming Friday. Now I'll turn it over to Lenore and Alexandra, and I'll be back on in a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I've been very excited for this one.
Thanks for inviting me to chat with you guys today about this. Love talking about gemstones.
So I wanted to just start by just giving you a couple minutes to introduce yourself. You can tell us a little bit about your background and the jewelry you design.
So I'm Alex Lozier. I am a jewelry artist and spiritual alchemist. I create magical talismans to help you to deepen your connection to Mother Earth and reveal the beauty of spirit for ultimate empowerment. I work with a lot of gemstones, crystals, mineral specimens, and other organic found objects like bones, insects, and wood, etc. I'm formally trained as a silversmith, which is my favorite metal to work with. I studied at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. I graduated there in 2010 and then moved to New York City, where I lived for about 7.5 years working in the field. And now I'm in the beautiful Hudson Valley. I get a lot of my inspiration from my sacred relationship with the land and just observing the natural landscape. I'm also a Reiki practitioner, and I have a deep interest in yoga, Ayurveda, the esoteric and occult arts, as well as other healing modalities. So it's a little bit about me.
Right, and so that's why I have you here today, because you and I, we're going to be talking about gemstone legends and curses. So there are so many that we could get into, but we're just going to narrow it down to a couple for today. So I'm going to give a little background on each, and then I'm going to let you share your perspective with us. And so the first one I wanted to start with is probably one of the most common gemstone myths, which is that opals are bad luck. And that's something that I'm sure you've heard before.
Yeah, I actually had a personal experience with Opal Misfortune, as they say. When I was in high school, I was totally captivated by this opal that I had found in this magical jewelry store in my hometown. I grew up in like a little antique farm town in Jersey, and my mother had always been a very difficult woman to please. Sorry, Mom, if you're watching this. But anyway, so Mother's Day was right around the corner, and I told my dad about this opal that I found, and I was like, I think Mom's really gonna like this for Mother's Day. And so we went to the store, we got the opal. Mom opens the gift on Mother's Day. The first words out of her mouth are, "Ugh, I wish it was bigger." And this angered me so much. I was so hurt by this.
Oh no.
And I was just like, you know what? Well, if you don't like it, I'm taking it back. And I started wearing the opal. And so opals have a very fiery energy, as you know, and anger is also a very fiery emotion. And during this time in my life, coincidentally, or should I say synchronistically, this was the most challenging time in my life. So in 1 week's time, my parents decided they were getting divorced. My soccer coach quit our team, which for me, like at that time in my life, soccer was like my entire life. I was like on this traveling team that we played year round, doing like tournaments all up and down the East Coast every weekend. So that was a big deal. And then my boyfriend at the time got locked up in an inpatient rehab for 8 months. So anything that was like any kind of like positive support,
Oh no.
like just totally fell apart. And I had like the rug ripped out from under me. And then I was in school one day and the opal fell from my neck. And I was so upset. And I like just remember going all around the school, like looking for it and retracing my steps. I couldn't find the opal. And then I was like looking to see if maybe like another student had found the opal and to see if they were wearing it. So like for months I was like looking at everyone's neck and I never found it. And now like later down the path on my like jewelry and gemstone journey, I didn't know about like Opal Misfortune at the time. So when I had learned that later, I was like, oh, that's really funny that those two things coincided. But I actually found this is a self-portrait print that I did of myself when I was in high school. So here is the infamous opal.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just thought that was kind of like a funny little piece of the story.
No, that's very cool.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's better you didn't find it.
Oh no, I'm like glad, to be honest, but it was beautiful. It was such a captivating opal, but
Right. Yeah. I mean, opals are gorgeous. You know, it's almost a shame that they have this, you know, sort of stigma attached to them. And I mean, there are a couple reasons for that. But one of the main reasons that you can trace back is this 1829 novel by Sir Walter Scott. And it's called Anne of Geierstein. And in this story, there is a character, and her name is Lady Hermione, and she wears this opal clasp in her hair. So later on in the story, the opal gets touched by holy water. It loses all its shine, and she falls to the ground, dies, crumbles into a pile of ash.
Whoa.
Yeah, very dramatic. So now if you finish this very long novel, you'll know that the opal doesn't really have anything to do with why this woman died, but it was a really dramatic image and it really stuck with people for a long time. So, I mean, maybe I know the answer to this question, but my first question for you is, do you believe that opals are bad luck?
I don't. So now that I'm a little bit older and I have more of an intimate awareness of my personal energy, I know that from an Ayurvedic perspective, which is the sister science of yoga based on the elements, number one, my body type is predominantly ruled by fire. And you look at my natal astrology chart, I have Mars, which is the masculine god of war, also in a fire sign of Aries in my first house, which essentially is like the first house is you and your personality, and also your physical body. And I also have a lot of like big outer planets in the sign of Sagittarius, which is another fire sign, in the 10th house, which is like your path in life and your career, and what you're meant to do in the world. And so I have enough fire energy on my own. So I think the way that I like to think about working with gemstones is that when you start working with a gemstone, you're essentially entering into a relationship. And your interaction with that gemstone is going to be unique to you and your own personal energy. So it's just like entering into a relationship with a person. You know, there's a period of time where you're getting to know each other and you've got to kind of see what the vibe is and how those energies can blend. And not all relationships are necessarily harmonious. So, you know, now that I have learned a little bit more about myself as well as working with stones in general, if I were to wear an opal again, I would do it with much more awareness as far as like what that opal's energy is and what my intention is behind wearing it. And, you know, also I do think that stones can hold energy. And we can talk about that more later on. I have something interesting to mention, but, you know, that opal for me carried that energy of being like angry and not good enough and whatever. And so, that's maybe not necessarily such a positive thing that I want to be embodying when I'm wearing a piece of jewelry. So, I think a big part of it is intention and awareness.
Right. So I guess now, knowing a little bit more about yourself than you did then, do you maybe sort of hold any sort of superstitions about gemstones? Are there any that, maybe for you wouldn't wear?
Well, I'll tell you, I have not worn an opal since. But I do.
Understandable.
I have like some really beautiful opals, and I don't know. I've made a couple of opal pieces. I haven't worn one, but we'll see. I mean, maybe in the future, if I had a really specific intention that I felt needed a little bit of fire energy, I would do so.
So maybe we'll leave it at a maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, as far as like a superstition, I personally don't really have one.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, opals were not always considered to be bad luck. In fact, they used to be considered good luck. I mean, if you look all the way back into ancient times, like ancient Greece, in Plato's Republic, it was called the invisibility stone. And then if you look to like the Middle Ages, it was called the magician stone. So because when you look at certain opals, you can see a bunch of different colors in it, they thought that it held the power of every gemstone. Which is something I always found interesting, especially when I think of how it's looked at now. So, I mean, I'm sure this might be something jewelers hear a lot of, like, oh, I don't want an opal is bad luck. Is there maybe a way to sort of reframe it, maybe highlight some of the better qualities of opal that you might be able to find?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think it comes down to intention and understanding your own personal energy, as well as how you want to move forward. So, like, for example, if I personally wanted to wear an opal, I would do so with an intention of, when I think about fire, it's something that brings passion and motivation, and it can bring movement. Fire's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
We need all of the elements. So, or maybe you're a person that you have too much water in your chart and you need to kind of heat things up. Or, I mean, if you're thinking of like opal as far as passion and that aspect of fire element, I mean, maybe that could be something that you would want to bring to a romantic relationship.
Right.
So I think that it's really different on an individual level.
Sure.
So I would just, again, really encourage people to think about, well, where am I at? What's my personal energy? And how can I move forward with this stone as an ally?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I guess it sort of depends on the person then.
Totally.
Right. So, I mean, there are a lot of people who are very superstitious and do believe in, cursed gemstones, right? So probably one of the most famous cursed gemstones is the Hope Diamond. I'm sure you've heard about this one.
Oh yeah, I've seen the Hope Diamond at the.
Oh, I have too. Isn't it gorgeous?
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing it's cursed, but I mean, maybe after you hear the story, maybe we'll make some more believers here. So supposedly the Hope Diamond brings bad luck to almost everyone who comes in contact with it. That's what the story says. So it was first bought by a French merchant traveler, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, I believe, in the 1600s. And so he sells this stone to King Louis XIV of France. And now it's said that the merchant was later mauled to death by dogs. And the king had a very unhappy life. And then that stone was passed on to King Louis XV. He died of smallpox. King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, they were both beheaded. And then later in the stone's life, it was bought by Evelyn Walsh McLean, and she was the Washington Post heiress. So she had a lot of money. incredibly unhappy personal life. When she died, she was super, super in debt, and her children wound up having to sell the stone. So they sold it to Harry Winston. He then sold it to the Smithsonian, where you can see it today. But so it's said that not even the mailman that delivered the stone to the Smithsonian was able to escape this curse. So this mailman, his name was Todd James. And after he delivered the stone, he gets into 2 separate car accidents. His wife dies, his dog dies, and then his house catches on fire. So really just horrible things all around, right?
Yeah. It's definitely a series of unfortunate events.
Yeah, and so it's said that the Hope Diamond is cursed because it was stolen from the eyes of a Hindu idol, and so the curse is still on it today.
Yeah, so that was the part of the story that I had heard. I didn't hear that he purchased stone, that the stone was stolen from a temple. So I mean, obviously, like, that is not good juju.
Sure.
I think it's really interesting that gemstones can kind of bring out like the polarities of like the human consciousness. You know, we see that in spiritual communities, especially now, like, you know, crystals are so popular right now.
Yeah, of course.
It's almost trending. I mean, I would say it is trending.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, there's the one side of it that is like love and light and expanding your consciousness and all of that stuff. But then there's also this aspect of gems and jewelry being these highly coveted items that really like drive people to do some pretty dark things. Like,
right.
I mean, could you imagine going into a Hindu temple and like stealing a prized gem? I mean,
I mean, the karma attached to that, I couldn't even think of it.
Yeah, it's outrageous the things that people have done in the name of gems and jewelry. So again, like I was saying before about my personal opal story, that opal carried the energy of anger and not being good enough, just like this diamond probably carries these other let's just say dark energies of, you know, being this highly coveted, stolen object, you know, so there was, you know, obviously also a lot of
Right.
deception, theft, lust for gems. So, you know, those aren't necessarily positive attributes that you would want to associate yourself. And in the occult arts, there is what's known as psychometry, which is the art of holding an inanimate object and being able to read the energy of the person that were before or a previous event. So I would say that, you know, and in the scientific communities, we're seeing now that they're actually encoding quartz discs to, I'm just going to read my notes here because this is really nerdy.
Yeah, please.
But they're called Superman crystals. They're quartz discs that are able to be encoded with 360 terabytes
of
5D data. And the data can be stored like pretty much indefinitely. So for 13.8 billion years in extreme heat of 190 degrees Celsius.
That's insane.
So it's now, so the science is just catching up to what we've known in the spiritual communities for thousands of years.
Right.
Gemstones hold energy, and if you don't consciously clear that energy, you know, that could travel and it could affect the next person that wears it. So I would say in terms of like, is it cursed, or has this diamond, you know, been affected by these sort of darker emotions, these highly charged events that it's been a part of?
Right. So, I mean, we've spoken a lot about, you know, bad luck stones, gemstones that are cursed. I kind of want to move on to some more good luck gemstones.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So one I wanted to bring up that I always think is very interesting and is maybe not one of the most popular gemstones, but it's one of my favorites, is zircon. So zircon, like some of the other stones, like an opal, it's been considered good luck. Oh yeah, show me.
I don't know if you can see this in the screen.
A little bit, I can see it.
I'll try to hold one up.
Yeah,
They're not
sure.
very big.
No, I can see that. That's perfect.
Mm.
So all the way back to ancient times in, Persia, Greece, Rome, they were thought to be good luck. It was thought to be a protective stone, something that would guard the wearer from dark spirits, disease, everything like that. And in the Middle Ages, it was thought that it would protect you from lightning strikes, that it would repel a lightning strike that was headed for you to someone else. And then you have rubies, for example. They're also thought to bring good luck and good fortune. And in Indian fables, it's said that rubies were gifts from the gods. So can you maybe share some of yours that you think are good luck, or personal favorites of yours?
So I actually have been on a serious ruby kick. You can see that I'm wearing.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, I love rubies. I mean, rubies are a stone of beauty, passion, prosperity. They're also very protective. So, they kind of cover all of your bases. Like when people say that they want to work with a gemstone for a specific reason, to me, rubies kind of embody all of the things. They also resonate with the heart chakra as well as the root chakra. So I find the energy to be so uplifting and just really heartfelt. And I love that about rubies. So, it was interesting. I had never heard about zircon being able to protect you from lightning strikes, but it's interesting because if you actually look at the natural formation, and I'm hoping this comes across clearly in the video, but if you look at the natural formation of a zircon crystal as well as a ruby, they're very similar in their crystalline structure as well as the color. And, this, maybe the zircon is a little bit more brown, but I found this little, it's like a children's book of like bedtime gemstone stories. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to read to you quickly about the story of the ruby, which is what we're talking about. And you can just see like the little illustration. It has a snake, and the snake laid an egg, and out of the egg, rubies were born.
Oh, that's really cool.
I have a pet snake, so I love this.
Oh, you do? Oh, that's cool.
His name's Noodle. He's a baby ball python. But it says, according to Burmese legend, the first rubies were hatched from an egg laid deep in the earth by a mysterious serpent. The creature laid 3 eggs. Out of the first egg came the king of Pagan, and out of the second, the emperor of China. When the third egg was hatched, the shell broke to reveal the rubies for which Burmese mines were subsequently famous. The Hindus called the ruby Ratnaraj, or king of precious stones. In the case of the ruby, nature for once matches the claims of the myth. One magnificent specimen found on the island of Ceylon was the legend of a man's palm and the thickness of a man's arm. Many European travelers saw this jewel, among them the 13th century Venetian Marco Polo, who pronounced it the most precious article that exists in the world, a glorious and incomparable specimen free from flaw and red as fire. Always prized for its gleaming red color, men believed that the ruby would shine through even the thickest layers of clothing. They also thought that if the possessor of a fine ruby touched the limits of his property with a jewel in his house and land, it would be protected from storms and lightning.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, the Bible says that the price of a virtuous woman is above that of rubies and suggests that the ladies are hard to find. A woman wishing to prove her virtue should try wearing the ruby on her left hand, as this is supposed to control amorous desire.
Oh. What do you
So there
know?
you go. And I actually didn't even know that when I made these rings that I wear on my left hand.
Meant to be.
So yeah, the legend of the ruby.
That's so interesting. I really
Yeah.
love all of these stories. I just think they're so much fun. And I think from what I've seen, protective jewelry, has been trending a
Yeah.
lot lately. I mean, you see a lot of evil eye jewelry and other like spiritual motifs. Have you seen an uptick in your customers, requesting these sort of protective stones?
Yeah, there's definitely like a few stones that if people are looking for like a protective quality that they ask for. But I think especially, it's like we're living in such a crazy time. And also we're living in a time where people are fearful of the future, but also feeling really deeply disconnected. And I think that that's something that people have been feeling like long before these lockdowns and we've been, physically separated. And I think it's kind of something that has stemmed from humanity's or I should say society's separation from nature. And
Right.
so I think that people have really been craving deeper meaning and people really want to have a sacred experience. And so what I try to encourage my customers to do when I work with them is to use their body as a magical pathway. And I think people really enjoy that because it's something very simple that you can do as an act of self-love and just kind of feel connected to something that has a deep meaning and that is a part of something that is bigger than ourselves. So yeah, I think people are really craving that right now. And I think jewelry is so personal that it's a really great vehicle to do that.
So, I mean, from what you've said, it sounds like this question may sort of depend on the person, but are there any stones that you personally would recommend if someone comes to you looking for sort of a protective piece of jewelry?
I definitely would want to learn a little bit more about the person and like where they're at in their life and their story, especially if I was like doing a commission. So I do, kind of get a feel for the person and what their goals are as far as a piece of jewelry. And then I'm able to direct them as far as stones that might come to mind for their specific situation. So that's something that I really enjoy doing. But some other ones that I work with frequently that are more common, I mean, I absolutely love amethyst crystals. And I think most people, when they get like their first crystal, it's usually like either a clear quartz or an amethyst crystal. So I think it's really funny that amethyst crystals, they usually tend to be people's first stone, but once you kind of like get into like the deep in the crystal game, if you will, that there's also really amazing specific crystal or amethyst localities, I should say, around the world that produce really unique and special amethyst crystals. So then it becomes kind of this more of like a collectible,
Right.
depending on the locality and how it was mined, etc. Black tourmaline is a crystal that people really enjoy wearing specifically for protection because that stone's also really grounding. And something that's unique to black tourmaline crystals also is that it can actually protect against the negative effects of EMFs or electromagnetic frequencies that are generated from computers, Wi-Fi, cell phones, etc. So that's something that's really cool to do. I try to keep like a nice chunk by my computer. And I mean, there's all kinds of gemstones out there. It's hard to just pick a favorite, but those are a few that I work with pretty often. And then I guess a third one I'd like to mention would be, especially because we're right around Halloween, is Labradorite. So Labradorite, it is a flashy blue. I think I have a piece nearby actually. But yeah, so Labradorite, it's this flashy blue color. And so this crystal, it resonates with your third eye chakra. So it helps to enhance your intuition. And it's also a really great stone for lucid dreaming or deciphering meanings from your dreams.
Oh, that's cool.
And it also resonates with the throat chakra. So when you combine these two chakras, it opens up pathways of communication between the seen and unseen realm. So as we are entering this time of Halloween, it's called the veil, which is the separation between the seen and the unseen realm of spirit where our ancestors live. And so this is a stone, especially during this time of year where that separation or the veil is becoming thinner and thinner up until Halloween, or as the Celts called it, Samhain. This is a really great stone for helping you to honor your ancestors and to open up those pathways of communication.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think a big part of selling jewelry is that storytelling aspect and, you know, sharing your knowledge with your customer. How do you use your knowledge of crystals to do that?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, it depends on, I would say, if I'm working with somebody one-on-one or they're just like shopping on my website.
Sure.
I try to I try to be an open book, you know. If I'm creating a piece of jewelry, I'm creating it with a really specific intention, and I am trying to convey that message and that story so that that person can feel empowered. I mean, the work that I'm creating, I really want it to have a profound effect on somebody's psyche and really like have the ability to lift them up and even have like a transformative experience. So it's beyond just being an accessory to me. So I try to just convey as much as I know, you know, either whether that's through my website or talking to customers one-on-one, so that people can really have an experience that feels personal to them. Because,
Sure.
you know, remember, like I said, it's really about the relationship that you have with yourself, as well as the relationship that you have with the stone and the blending of those two energies. So I try to really convey that so that everyone can have a unique experience.
Gotcha. So we're almost to my last question here. So I think that there are going to be some people who are, you know, listening to you and I talk today, and they're going to have the impression that, you know, these two, they're here talking nonsense, this like crystals and magic and curses and like, you know, none of this is real. But I mean, for you and for a really large community of people, this is something very real. And this is something that you have built a lifestyle, you know, and a business around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in your experience, you know, what is the best way, you know, to sort of convert a non-believer or, you know, show people that these stones, they really do hold meaning?
Well, I guess it's a multi-answer, but the first thing I would say to a non-believer would be, number one, I would say non-believers, they're probably very scientific. So look at the science. So I actually dropped a link where you can, the viewers can go check that out. It's a link to what I was talking about earlier about the Superman crystals, about how they're using to encode energy. And so what I've found as being somebody that does appreciate science, but honestly, I'm really more spiritually inclined, which I think you could probably tell at this point. But, you know, just look at what is happening in the science, in the scientific communities. Look at how these stones are being used in an industrial way, because the information is there. The scientific and the industrial purposes of these stones, of which there are many, always reflect what the spiritual meanings are. So there is golden threads of truth through all of these different lenses at which you can view the same thing. So that would be number one. And, you know, on top of that, I mean, just look around you. We're living in a world that is not well. You know, our planet is in a state of distress. And, you know, what's going on with climate change and our planet is being like very negatively impacted from human activity. And you see that reflected in the health of the people. How many people do we know that either have cancer or chronic illness and etc.? So, you know, I personally believe that when we heal ourselves, we heal the planet. And when we're working with gemstones, what we're doing is we're working with the Earth's intelligence, and we are reclaiming our connection to Mother Earth. And I really think that that is the foundation of health and prosperity and all of these, you know, beautiful, positive attributes that we want to include in our life, but that relationship has been really broken. So for me, working in this way and having a sacred relationship with the land and using stones, it enables me to get back in touch with myself and also to get back in touch with that sacred relationship with the land that is home to us all. And to me, I find that to be really empowering and uplifting. And I mean, I think that's something that we all can use right now.
Right, absolutely. All right, well, that is a positive note to end my questions on.
Yeah.
That is all I have for you. I really appreciate you coming here to talk with us. And
Thank
now,
you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here. And obviously, I love talking about gemstones.
yeah, me too. This was so much fun for me. So on that note, I am going to turn it over to Michelle. I'm going to see if she has any questions for us.
I do. I have quite a few questions that came in during the presentation, and thanks, Lenore and Alexandra. That was a really cool discussion. That was really interesting. I enjoyed it as well. And thanks again to our sponsor, RDI Diamonds. As a reminder, you can still type questions into the Zoom Q&A box, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. It's the little one with the two kind of thought bubbles, speech bubbles over it. We'll try to get to as many questions today as we can. While we compile the Q&A, I just want to say a quick word about RDI Diamonds. RDI Diamonds, the selection you want, the quality you need. Thousands of diamonds, that's just the beginning. RDI offers a wide range of services and support to help you succeed. From flexible memo options to a partnership with De Beers Group Industry Services to generous stock options and cost-efficient shipping. RDI's goal is to provide the highest quality of both care and diamonds to your store. Visit rdidiamonds.com today to learn more. And that again is rdidiamonds.com. Now let's get started with our listener questions. So Alexandra, we had two questions related here to the information you shared during the presentation. The first one, someone wanted to know about where you put that link that you were talking about with the quartz and the scientists, and that is in the chat, and you can message me again to the listener if you don't see that. And the second one was the same listener wanted to know, Alexandra, who wrote the jewel book that you held up, the children's book that you were reading from?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, it says on the back that it's by the Leprechaun Library, which I'm assuming is the publisher, and the author is Anne Harvey and illustrated by Philip Argent. It's called Jewels.
Okay.
Can you guys see that?
Yes, thank you so much. If you want to go ahead and type that into the chat?
Sure.
Okay. And we also had two questions I thought were really interesting about lab-grown stones. So someone wanted to know, do you think that synthetic gems, lab-grown gems, carry the same energy as as natural stones, stones mined from the earth? And also related to this, what are your feelings about lab-grown diamonds?
I would say that they do not carry the same energy, because when we are, for me personally, this is my personal opinion, I feel that crystals and stones are the Earth's intelligence. And the Earth shows us her intelligence in a multitude of ways, but it's relative to, like, let's say, for example, you take a vitamin that is something that is like made in a test tube. It's bioactively dead. There's no earth intelligence. There's no plant intelligence there, versus interacting with a plant and using a plant medicine in a more holistic way. That medicine is going to be more bioavailable. Your cells are going to know what to do with it because it has that earth, that plant intelligence. So I would say that even though something might be the same on a molecular level, that doesn't mean that it has intelligence.
Okay.
So to me, it wouldn't hold the same energetic frequency, essentially.
Okay. And are the lab grown diamonds, I mean, and this is just your opinion, feel free to express it. Are that something you'd like to work with, or you're not interested in that?
I sort of don't know. I mean, I rarely even work with a faceted gemstone, to be honest. And this is just me personally. My favorite thing is working with the stones as they come out of the earth as much as possible. So like as raw as possible. I like working with that natural expression. It's not to say that I wouldn't ever. Maybe. I'm not sure right now. I would definitely consider it.
I guess if someone asked, right?
Sure, yeah.
And then we had another question come in. Someone wrote, I wonder about the powers of gemstones. Are they powerful enough to awaken your intuition?
100%. So when I first started on my journey of spiritual awakening, and that wasn't even really my intention at the time, it was something that just kind of spontaneously started to generate, if you will. But during that time, I used to wear a huge Labradorite pendant. And I think that is, I mean, I personally don't really believe in coincidences. I think that life is always happening for you if you allow it, and you can learn to open yourself up to start looking for synchronicities and start looking for lessons in everything, even when things are going horribly wrong. Like everything is a lesson potentially that you can grow and evolve from. So, you know, I think gemstones can be a really powerful tool to open us up to that. And, you know, if you're trying to open your intuition specifically, I would start working with Labradorite.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And on that note, did your fortune improve after you lost the opal? Do you remember?
It did, but it did take a while. But I mean, that was just a challenging time in my life. I mean, who's to say that those events wouldn't have taken place anyway, opal or not? On a spiritual level, you know, they say that when your heart breaks, that's where the light gets in, and that sometimes like your hardships or your traumas or even illnesses, whatever it is, it's sort of the gateway to your evolution and your spiritual awakening. So, you know, I think everything has the potential to have a blessing if you can try to learn the lessons. So I think it took me a while to get there, but life has definitely improved since I lost the opal, for sure.
Okay.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. Definitely. That was definitely
I'm doing
rough
great,
period.
guys. Thank you for asking.
Not as rough as the poor people who own the Hope Diamond, which I think is like blessedly locked away in a museum now. So
Yeah,
no one
maybe
has
keep
to
it
deal
there.
with that. Maybe just keep it there and people can enjoy it from afar. I also wanted to note that just as a side note, please don't wear Zircon and run out in a lightning storm. With National Jewelers not guaranteeing that'll prevent you from getting struck by lightning. So this is
No endorsements.
no endorsements.
This is like a side note.
This side note, this is a legend. We're not suggesting that you run outside in a storm with Zircon on, although it is pretty.
Not endorse this legend.
Lenore, I have a question for you.
Yeah, please.
So you're doing this webinar today, and you wrote, I believe last year, a story about gemstone legends and lore, which was really popular on our site after you went to a session on it at Conclave, I believe.
Yes.
So have you evolved to have any superstitions about gemstones, either stones you want to wear because they think they're good luck, or stones you've kind of like banned from your wardrobe because you think they're bad luck?
I mean, I am a bit of a superstitious person. I wouldn't say that there are any, well, no, that's not true. I don't wear opal. I don't know that I necessarily believe that it is bad luck, but it's not one of my favorites. And I sort of feel like if I don't love it and it could be bad luck, why risk it?
Fair enough. And is there anything you've added to your wardrobe or would like to add to your wardrobe that you feel like, oh, this would be a good stone for me, this is protective, or this would be good luck?
Well, I mean, probably my favorite stones to wear and the ones that I do feel like give me a little extra good luck are my birthstone stones. I love citrine.
Okay. Yeah, Lenore is a November baby.
I am. I'm a
If,
Scorpio.
if anybody's taking
It
if
is.
anybody's taking gift suggestions.
Yes, citrine, please. Citrine and silver. Thank you.
Okay, we'll note that. We have another question that just came in. One of our listeners wants to know, Alexandra, do you feel your energy transfers into a piece of jewelry when you make it?
Yes, and I also channel Reiki energy when I make my jewelry, and I create sacred space in my jewelry. So for those of you that don't know what Reiki is, it is when you are channeling life force energy. So in Japanese, it's called ki. In Chinese, it's called qi. In Sanskrit, it's called prana. So you're essentially charging the jewelry with this life force energy. And so that's just like another layer of meaning that I like to put into my jewelry as I'm creating it during the process.
That's really cool. And I think, everybody, whether you believe like by wholesale into like superstition, John, this is bad luck, this is good luck. I think a lot of people who wear jewelry have favorite pieces or lucky pieces. And whether you realize it or not, like you do kind of buy into that like kind of superstition about like I have a necklace that is very dear to me, belonged to my grandma, and I always wear it when I travel. And I now and I've never had any terrible luck traveling, like the plane crashed obviously or something like this. So I now wear it every time I travel because I'm like, I've kind of come to associate with like my grandma protecting me or watching over me while I'm on a trip. And also she's passed now, but getting her take with me because she liked to travel. So it's a way for her, I feel like, to still experience that. So I think everybody has those little kind of stories in their mind that they attach to jewelry. And that's what makes jewelry so cool. And Alexandra, you mentioned that earlier. It's really personal. Like we wear it on our bodies. It touches us. It's not the same as a purse or your iPad or something. Thank God.
Totally. And the thing is that there's so many different ways to use jewelry in a spiritual context. And when people that are spiritual use a lot of this language that maybe somebody that's not really into it might consider to be woo-woo, that's fine. The thing is that we all are of a spiritual nature, and that we do things that are of a spiritual nature, whether we consider it to be that or not. Like just kind of like what you were explaining about your grandmother's pendant. We all have these ways in which we create meaning in our lives. And, whether you want to put that in a spiritual context or not. I mean, even just like a commemorative piece of jewelry, you reached a milestone in your life and you want to celebrate that, and you go out and you buy a necklace, whatever. I mean, it's up to you to decide what that meaning and what that significance is in your life. And when you do that, you're essentially having a conversation with your subconscious mind, which is kind of like running the show behind the scenes, So once we start assigning meaning to either gemstones or jewelry or other objects or events in our life, there's some real power there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much. We're out of questions and we're actually almost out of time here. That link or the name of the book is again Jewels by Anne Harvey. And that is appearing in the chat now, along with the link that Alexandra shared earlier. Just a couple notes before we sign off here today. I wanted to say that you can tune in for another episode of My Next Question next Tuesday, October 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Senior editor Brecken Brandstrader will be interviewing gemologist and historian Helen Molesworth about the historic jewels she's handled, researched, and valued while working for major auction houses. Helen has worked at Christie's and Sotheby's, and she's going to be talking, the conversation will include Princess Margaret's collection, which she examined in 2006. And you can read more about that and register on the National Jeweler website. And I'm going to drop that link into the chat again. Just so if anybody wants to go to our website and see what we have coming up, you can sign up for next week's and see what else we're doing with our webinars. And that is all for today. So thanks again, Alexandra and Lenore. It was a lot of fun. And I hope everyone has a great afternoon and happy Halloween.
Thank you. Happy Halloween.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.